my sister that was found in 1912 by my great-grandfather, who was a glass painter himself. He moved to Paderborn working for the diocese, creating leaded stained glass windows that he designed by himself. Over the last few years and decades, our company has evolved to not create art ourselves anymore, but be a partner and a team for artists all over the world, translating their ideas and visions into glass. We have a company with 65 people working here in our studio, trained craftsmen in the diversity of techniques, and have developed over the years to be a leading company offering a diversity of different technical solutions to artists. We do acid etching on antique glass, leaded glass, float glass painting, airbrushing, ceramic printing, screen printing, and many other techniques, and find our specialty in offering this wide diversity of solutions. Today we work for a huge number of artists, but are always open for new collaborations. I would think that we have a continuous stock of about 100 artists that we work with on a frequent basis, with new ones coming and joining all the time. A great example was the exhibition that we had in Chartres at the Centre du Vitrail, The Search of the Night. We exhibited more than 300 pieces of art created here in the studio with all different artists for this exhibition. We have specialized in being a studio for architecturally integrated art, public art, where we started off with mostly working for liturgical projects, churches and buildings associated to this, fairly local here in the Paderborn area and district. We have now grown over the borders of the country. We were quite international. We still do and love to do these liturgical projects here in the area, but also do projects, for example, like the new midfield concourse at the Hong Kong International Airport, train and subway stations in New York. For example, we're just doing a project out at Jamaica Station or 57th Street Station in New York. We've worked for many other airports, Dallas Love Field, Raleigh-Durham Airport, Frankfurt International Airport, and many others. And always seek for new opportunities. We recently completed our first project over in Australia, in Sydney, at the Barangaroo International Towers, and really enjoy every day creating these pieces of art that are reaching and touching so many people across the world. We've met Per Kim, or were introduced to Per Kim through our exhibition at the Centre du Vitrail in France, and we're delighted to create 4 pieces for this exhibition for him, showing the possibilities of translating his art onto glass, and have since then, that is now almost 2.5-3 years ago, started working on a number of different projects, as well in France as here in Germany, and slowly started with a huge series of samples, showing him the possibilities we've had in the studio, and are really looking forward for this ongoing relationship and the possibilities working with him. So what we have here is one of our painting and airbrushing rooms. We're working here at the moment on a project for an airport in America, Seattle SeaTac Airport, an American artist, Cable Griffiths, that quite typically shows the way we work. What you see on the wall behind me is the very small design overview, and that's also very similar of how we would work for Per Kim, that we keep a reference of the overview for the painter on the wall. We see here at the rear end the one-to-one printouts of the design. There was also paper printouts that are printed to scale, full size, that our painters put underneath the glass at the beginning when translating and painting for the artist. That gives them guidelines and reference to interpret the work. And at a certain stage, when there is enough information on the glass, we put the paper printout away and complete the design with the existing guidelines. This one is, of course, compared to Father Kim's work, a lot more graphic and precise due to the pixelated basic of the design, but the general principle is quite the same. In this case, we received from the artist a digital computer file showing the entire composition of these 22 panels of glass all on one layer. We have then for ourselves split this art into different layers. You can see here those little pictograms, pixelated squares in the back. We have separated those. That's what you see on the two layers on the other side. Into the two layers of the artwork, the background layer and the foreground layer. And we have then cut the design into sections following the glass separations on site, created the one-to-one paper printouts, as well as computer cut vinyl stencils that we taped to the glass that are being followed as a guideline for the project.
And this colouring has been done digitally, or how was it done?
What we see here at the moment in terms of an application is airbrushed vitreous enamel application. What we do is we spray the color with an airbrush pistol and air pressure onto the glass. We do this to create fades and shades of color that don't have too much brush strokes and textures. For Father Kim's work, we also quite sometimes use these techniques to increase saturations in colors that have been applied with a brush, or create fades and softer washes of colors that don't show any brush strokes or textures. He often has these very smooth and plain colors in his work.
And so this is the glass work, or this is still?
What you see here is the glass.
Mm-hmm.
The glass, and that's also identical to Father Kim's work, is going through several stages in the process, meaning it has several layers of color application, several layers of firing. Most of the colors we use are fired at a temperature around 600 degrees Celsius to form a permanent bond with the
after it's been painted.
Surface of the glass, after it's painted and in between the stages of painting. This enables us to create layers of colors, sharp edges next to each other. And in Father Kim's work, that's also the case, that we have areas where colors blend into one another. We have very soft fades going into one another, and we have areas with very hard edges, creating clear separation and forms.
And in terms of time, once you've received the piece from the artist, going through to putting the digital version there to this, how long would that take?
The size that we take to work on a project, of course, depends very much on the size of the entire project, the amount of details.
To make one panel like this?
For a panel like this, we are calculating on 5 to 6 layers of firing. So if we would be painting on one piece consistently, we would need 6 days of painting plus a firing time, which describes the process for translating the artwork. After the artwork has completed, we have another phase of technical processing where we often work the glass into security glass, toughened or tempered glass, laminated glass, insulated glass units, or any guidelines that would follow the architectural standards and specifications.
So what you start working on is a piece of plain clear glass?
In many situations, what we start with is a plain or a clear glass that we apply applications of paint on, but we do separate the processes of painting on glass and painting with the glass itself. So what we see here, and what we've used quite a bit so far in the translation of Father Kim's designs, is applying layers of paint onto a clear sheet of glass, a plain sheet of glass, but also we have the process of working with glass that is colored throughout or flushed with color on top, so that we begin with a colored sheet of glass and remove layers of the colors, remove layers of colors with the process of acid etching or sandblasting. And of course these processes can be combined as well. What you see here at the moment with these pieces of glass that are being prepared for a project in Austria, we're applying these vinyl stencils as guidelines to apply the color. So there is the shiny and reflective area that you see here still shows the blank glass surface. We will be painting this by hand in the next stage and process. Peel off the vinyl stencil so that the color only sits and rests in the areas where we want it to be. Again, the same situations. All this glass has been prepared for the next process and stage of painting and airbrushing. We will be spraying and painting these pieces by hand, peel off the stencil, and really only have the artwork in the areas where we want it. So what you see here is our acid etching room for the removing of layers of the glass itself. What we use is a flushed mouse-blown antique glass made by often Lamberts in Valsassen, a glass manufacturer for this wonderful mouse-blown material. For Father Kim's work we use different hand-painted applied maskings that we mask on the glass before putting it into the hydrofluorescent acid, removing layers of the glass. It's often painted with wax or asphalt, missing the right English word on this one at the moment, being put into the acid bath or painted with the acid itself. And that allows us to create these soft and smooth fades within the glass. These freestanding steels for a healing garden in Britain for a British artist, Stoney Parsons is her name. We are following her watercolor sketches that are sized down in scale, that's the original piece here, and translating this all freehand painting with freehand painted stencils on the glass, masking of certain areas to get harder lines of these dried water textures. So probably what we would be doing next on these ones here is creating another fade of yellow reddish, warming the color here a little bit at the top section with the sun a little bit, and then peeling off the painted vinyls on the glass. We want to blend it into a complete
So in this case, you would have received the canvas from the artist?
In this case, we received the small watercolor original from the artist that we scanned in high resolution and made one-to-one printouts that our painter put as a reference initially underneath the glass, following the guidelines, creating the initial concept. He's applying at the moment the intensities of the color with a soft and smaller brush, and will soften these in the next stage with a badger's brush, fading the color in and out, which would also be a typical process for creating Kim's work, is working with the general forms and gestures, and then softening and smoothing the colors, creating these perfect looks of the color. So he's now fading in the second color of white into the center of what could be interpreted as the sun. And in the next stage we'll then blend those into one another.
And this would still be baked afterwards, eh?
Yes, and when it's fired in the kiln, on top we would apply the next layer of color.
So this person would have been working for how long with you?
Eduard still looks very young, but is quite experienced and has been with us now. Let's make me a guess. You're here for 10 years, 11? Eduard, wie lange bist du schon in der Firma?
15.
15.
Wie lange geht die?
Okay. Okay. And this is the type of work you would do all the time?
Yes.
Specialized.
All people in the studio have gone through an apprenticeship system. It's a 3-year training system of where they would go through each of the different stages and disciplines in the studio and specialize afterwards. Eduard works as a painter in our studio and is trained and specialized interpreting various styles and different artists' hands into glass. We'll come in this room in a moment, which is our big firing place. So again, this being one of our airbrush rooms, what we see here is the work that we've seen previously in the masking room for the airbrushed enamels. You can see the exact or very similar forms that have been sprayed with the airbrush pistol onto the glass vitreous enamels. We then peel off the stencil and have these pure forms of color in that exact shape. Here you can see a fired piece. You can see the difference in the transparency, in the luminosity of the color, in the glossiness. It is one of our big kilns where we fire the glass. We have kiln capacities to fire glasses 6 meters long in one piece.
How long is it fired for?
The firing schedule that we use depends a little bit on the thickness of the glass, the type of color that we use, but typically it's a firing overnight. Anything between 10 and 12 hours is quite typical.
And how many kilns do you have?
We in total have 7 kilns. So let me count. No, it's What we'll see here is our biggest kiln. It has a length of 6 meters, continuous for glass. It's still a little too warm to open it yet. It's about 80 degrees Celsius. Would like to wait a little longer, but what we can do is take a look at our other painting room. Our color sample room, and I wanted to give you an overview on possibilities of vitreous enamels and colors. So quite often we would go through details with the artist, reviewing his design, selecting areas in the design to decide how they would be interpreted, what kind of texture they would have, what kind of color saturation they would have, and explore the possibilities and the diversity of color in here.
So with Kim's work, he wouldn't see the final product until it's actually installed sometimes.
The process with the artist on what stages they would see their work is quite diverse. We have artists that come in the studio, inspect the work at various stages. We have exhibition windows that allow us to set up different sections of glass in the daylight and combine them together. Father Kim has been in the studio several times reviewing his work, reviewing samples and studies on the way. But everything we can do here at the studio is only an attempt coming close to the final result, because it's always different seeing the work installed in its final situation, in its final environment and on site.